And I met there Colonel Reinhardt. All his names are fictive because in intelligence all the names are fictive. And he called an agent, Mr. Lemaire, who took me by car to Schaffhausen. And Schaffhausen was chosen because they are enclave. That means that the Swiss territory juts into Germany. And I will explain to you how I crossed. That was a documentary. It didn't show the place where I really crossed. You guys understood that, I hope. But anyway, Mr. Lemaire stopped the car near a little forest. We crossed the forest, and across on the other side of the forest was a huge field. And the northern edge of the field was bordered by a road. And the road was German. The field and the forest were Swiss, but the road was German. And the road was controlled by two sentinels, armed sentinels. One came from the eastern edge of the field, walked about towards the middle of the field, and the other sentinel came from the west and met him. They talked 2 or 3 minutes, then separated, turned their backs, and walked to the edge of the field on both sides. And they did that constantly, back and forth. So Mr. Lemaire said to me, towards evening, you are going to crawl along this field when the 2 sentinels turn their back to you, and when they come back and turn their back again, and you hide behind the bushes near the road. And when they come back again and separate again, then you go on the road and you walk towards the east, that means to the right, towards Singen. I was going to Singen, which was only 2 kilometers from there. There was no barbed wire, no fence, nothing between the field and the road. We had just to walk on the road. So we stayed all afternoon in that field, in that little forest, and Mr. Lemaire was a man of about 40, in the 40s. I was 24, and he was talking to me about his wife and children. But in the afternoon, with a little smile, he said to me, you might be killed tonight, so why don't we have a good time now? But that was not to be. Anyway, after, towards evening, he told me now is the time. So I took my little suitcase and I crawled along the field and hid behind the bushes. Until then, I was perfectly all right. But once behind the bushes, seeing the soldiers coming and going, I could not make myself get up and walk into Germany. I was so fearful that I could not function anymore. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. And I felt very sorry for myself. And I felt that nobody could ask me to do such a thing. But finally, after a very, very long time, I cannot tell you how long, I decided that I had to do it. And I got up when the 2 sentinels had met and separated again and turned their backs to me. I got up, walked, took my little suitcase and walked on the road. I have to tell you, I had no radio, no arm, no map, no documents. Everything I needed to know was in my memory. And I then walked on that road, walked towards the soldier who was coming back towards me, raised my right arm, Heil Hitler, and he asked me for my identity papers. So I showed him my identity papers. Now I was called Marthe Ulrich. That was my new name. And until then, I had absolutely no idea if the forged paper my intelligence service had given me were valid or not. But he gave them back to me. I was now in Germany. So I was first in Singen for 2 days. Then I took a train to go to Freiburg, and I never took another train because constantly the military police, they were huge guys with a metal plaque on their chest. We called them during the occupation of France, we called them the dogs in leash because they had metal leashes to hold their plaque. And they constantly checked our papers. Every few minutes they would come by and check our papers. And every time I had to give my forged papers to check, I was very careful. And I never took another train for that reason. And the trains were running only at night because of the bombardments. So in daytime there were no transports at all. So I arrived in Freiburg, and from Freiburg I went, like you saw in the DVD, I went to the Siegfried line. I really didn't go to the Siegfried line. I was going to the home of somebody who lived near the Siegfried line. But my service, there were many holes in my story. My service had forgotten to tell me where the Siegfried line entrances were. So I didn't know, but it just happened that these people lived across the street from an entrance to the Siegfried line. And in the group walking with us was the SS you heard about in the DVD. And that SS was constantly boasting about the atrocities they had committed in Poland and in Russia against the Jews and the Poles and the Russians. And everybody was laughing and having a good time. I had to smile, at least smile, so that I don't become suspicious. And walking, he constantly said, I smell a Jew a mile away. And he was walking next to me. But to show you how stupid that whole thing is. But anyway, as we were walking quite fast, he had just come back from the hospital. He had been wounded on the Russian front, and he fainted. And I took care of him. I was a German nurse, I took care of him. And when he regained consciousness, he was so grateful that I had taken care of him that he invited me to come and visit him to the Siegfried line. And he gave me his phone number. So I did not go immediately to see him in the Siegfried line. But 3 weeks later, when I came back to Freiburg, I heard on the radio that the Allied armies were very close to Freiburg and were entering the city very shortly. So I decided that's the right moment to go to see my Nazi friend. So I went to the Siegfried line. It was only 10 kilometers walking. So I went there, and when I arrived there, discovered that the Siegfried line had been completely empty. I don't know if you realize how important that information is, because the Siegfried line was a fortress manned by a great army with extremely up-to-date armament. And it was like the Maginot Line in France, it was absolutely believed impossible to conquer. So the American army in the northern Rhineland, before they entered Germany, bombarded the Siegfried line with, I think, 2,000 planes, night and day for 3 weeks. And though they had bombarded so intensively, they still lost a lot of men when they tried to conquer the Siegfried Line in the northern Rhineland. So you can understand how important it was for me to discover that the Siegfried Line was empty, that we had not, our army had not to fight it. They could immediately conquer the south of Germany, which was not yet conquered. So I walked back as far as I could to Freiburg and waited for the army to enter, the Allied armies to enter Freiburg. And Freiburg was completely deserted because it was normal. The people of Freiburg were terrified at the idea that a foreign army was going to occupy them, which is a normal thing. So they were all in their homes. I was all alone in the city of Freiburg. So I went to the main avenue and I waited. And when the first tank arrived, it happened that it was the French army which occupied Freiburg. So when the French first tank arrived towards me, I went in the middle of the street and I made the V sign of Churchill, the victory sign. I had to stop them. I was in civilian clothes, they couldn't know who I was. So the tank stopped in front of me. They could have crushed into me, but they stopped. I was like usually. And I asked for the officer who commanded the tank to come down and talk to me. And he did. Don't ask me how I managed all that, but he did. And then I told him, you have to take me immediately to headquarters because I have very important information. And he took me. So I was quite assertive at that time. So he took me and I met Commandant Petit of the 2nd Zouave, to whom I gave all the information. And first, he was a little suspicious because I was in civilian clothes, I had no proof who I was, and he wondered if I was really a French agent or if I was trying to get them in trouble. So I wrote to him a phone number of my agency, he called them, and they reassured him that he could trust me. So after that, he sent a patrouille to the Siegfried Line, and